Hello, it's Friday, and once again, it is time for relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons. And I'm here with barbarians that are almost done. I'll be finishing those up today, one way or the other. And yes, Medicinal Shy Guy, we are going live. It was like 57 seconds after 10. 57 seconds after 10, and you're already, with all caps, thank you, asking whether or not the stream is going to be started. Is Who on? Because when Who comes on, they're going to ask for flips, but nope, not here on time. I mean, ooh, you are here. Okay. I always try to wait until 1 minute after, right? Because, people are just, it starts at 10 and you start, booting up your computer at 10 and starting your Twitch feed and looking at your phone, and then you're distracted by an email or something. So I usually try to give people a 1 minute break, or I don't know, maybe I'm just not paying attention to the clock. That could happen too. But so I'll do a flip. I flipped this before. This is a cap to one of the brushes. It flips pretty well. The thing is that you can't tell, well, other than for the little spot on it, you can't tell which way it lands. But yep, we'll flip this to the three flips. That was a pathetic flip. There we are. Isn't that good? What I might just do is I'll just keep flipping this. No, it fell down on the floor, and that's a long way down. That's been flipped off. So today I'm going to be finishing up these barbarian figures. As you can see, they're I don't know, I'm still getting used to this sideways camera thing. Nikki set it up this way because it was in her face, but I don't know. What do you think? Should I do? Is this sideways camera thing working, or should I rotate it? Let me see what happens if I rotate it the way it would otherwise be. This is always a good way to... Oh, now it's upside down. There we go. It's always a good way to use up a bunch of time. Instead of doing relaxing painting, is I get to play with the camera, and then if anybody's watching, they can get like vertigo or motion sickness or something. Yeah. And I get to talk about the location of the camera and how it's working or not working. And then I don't have to do what this is supposed to be doing, which is painting. But anyway, it's Friday. I'm feeling tired and grumpy, and when you're this old, you just sort of feel tired and grumpy all the time. So this really isn't anything exceptional. Why even bother telling you? So let me tell you a little bit about these figures. Yes, it is grumpy relaxing. Sometimes it's relaxing just listening to somebody else grump, because then you don't have to. It can be like grumping by proxy, kind of. That's the service I'm providing for you today. So this poor figure, this poor barbarian, is, I have to say, just exceptionally brave, because they have had a broken arm. When I had it on the holder before, and the holders had magnets on the bottom and they repel each other, and this one gets thrown across the table. Subsequently has had 2 broken legs. Yep. So this barbarian is, if nothing else, incredibly persistent, because they are continuing to charge forward in a very forceful manner, with a broken arm and 2 broken legs, which have healed. Fortunately, they're they've healed, but as you can see, they require a little bit of touch up. So what I'll be starting with today is doing the final cosmetic touches ups of the broken legs, because I don't know, this figure just keeps falling and breaking things. Stir the paint here. As always, I always try to do that, especially for Who. I know Who really likes that a lot. There we go. Okay, well, enough of that. So I'll take off my glasses so I can see close up. Just little personal details. I know that everybody's really interested in that. Is that I had gotten new glasses about a couple of months ago, and they just didn't work. These are blended trifocals. If you don't know what it's like to see the world through blended trifocals, I'd recommend just not bothering. It's not that good. So I have an appointment next week to, again, see if I can't get some glasses that work. But I know that in any case, I'm not going to be getting glasses that work for this close-up work, because without corrective lenses, this right here, this distance, about, in my case, less than a foot, is the only part that actually stays in focus without corrective lenses. Very, very nearsighted that way. Okay, so there's that repair, and then we'll repair this one. This was a compound fracture. I mean, it was a real serious fracture, and I actually ended up having to put in some filler, some plastic filler. Aesthetic device, I guess, because there were just multiple fractures there on the right leg of this barbarian. And what I'll be doing after this paint dries, actually before that, I'll be starting on the other one, is, I mean, they're really, so the paint, the detail, I thought actually came out pretty well on this. And you got the belt buckles and the bandoliers and the little scarf on the head and everything. Even the strapping on the back of the armor there on the arm, because it doesn't go all the way around. It's held by straps. I got all of that. So I'm going to take all of that wonderful detail that I spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. It must have felt like months to people who were listening in and watching. While you were listening to me babble on about whatever. Yeah. Now I'm going to cover it all in dark gray wash and make it look all scuzzy, because they're barbarians, right? And I know that some people have said that they kind of like this style that is sort of cartoonish, with the clean it was called. Colors are, not covered in different washes and things, but given that these are barbarians, this, although I think the color scheme is really quite nice, probably just needs to be all muddied up. So that's what I'll be doing today. I'm not very good at it. Nicole is really excellent at that kind of shading. I just kind of spread it around and hope that it doesn't look awful. I'll be using 2 colors of wash. One is brown, and I'll be using that on the exposed skin of these models. This guy has quite a lot of it. I would say he has bare arms, but then we'd start having to get into the whole, no, this is not a bear figure, so he doesn't have bare arms. He has humanoid arms. But we won't do that, because that would be dumb. Say dumb things on this show. Yeah, so I'll be using some brown wash on the exposed like head and arms and hands and stuff, just to tone down, the flatness of it, so it doesn't look quite so flat. So it picks up and emphasizes some of the contours and the fingers and the facial features and things. Ears. So I'll be using a fairly small brush, and maybe even for parts of it, a little teeny brush. And then I'm just going to use the same dark wash for everything else, just all of it. And I'll be spreading it on, I'm hoping, lightly, like not real heavy. Sometimes the wash behaves, sometimes it doesn't. What's the worst that can happen, right? Is that it'll look really gross and we'll never see it again. Otherwise, these things might show up. Never can be sure about that. They might show up on our stream. So as I am putting these on here and continuing to procrastinate, here it gives me better odds of staying on camera, even though you can't see the detail quite as well. Yeah. Yeah, that fracture was pretty nasty. It shows up, you can see it on the boot here. No, you can't really, maybe. Yeah, it didn't really ever get set correctly. Anyway, yeah. She's really good at shading. I'm not. So I don't know how this is going to end up looking. We'll find out. I almost did it again. See, these things, it's like magic, the magic of magnets. I get to play with those for a while. That's how this one got broken first, is that I put this one, set this down close to it, and it flew about 8 or 10 inches. It was pretty impressive issue there. After I'm done with these, then the last 2 printed and primed figures yet are these kind of like nightlight figures. And this is a combination, looks like, of metal armor overlaying some bits of leather. And of course they have capes, because everybody has to have a cape. We've talked about that, about how just effective they are in terms of impeding your movement and entangling your weapons and things. Yeah. Given that level of effectiveness, everybody has to have one. I have no clue. I mean, I'll only paint the armor kind of like metallic, right? Dark aluminum or duraluminum, or maybe chainmail silver or something. This guy's got a shield. There is no embellishment on the shield, which, I'll say it this way, provides a blank canvas for a freehand design. And since it's just right the whole front of the shield, I might try something. I'll try to do that. Just to paint something on here, I don't know, some sort of either geometric design or like an animal or something. I have virtually no artistic skills. I've mentioned that several times. So it's likely to turn out poorly. But the nice thing about this is that it's a big flat surface, and I can just paint over it. Or if the paint starts building up too high, get some sandpaper out and just sand it all off. But yeah, I'll finish the barbarians no matter how much I avoid actually doing anything today, no matter how much I delay applying wash to these figures. There isn't much to be done, so I will end up finishing them. I guess no matter what. Why would I put the Klingon Empire logo on it? I mean, it's a cool logo and all, but it doesn't. Does this figure look Klingon-y? I don't know. Maybe it would be one of those things where it's an anachronism or something, where something is out of time. But I'm open to ideas, but they have to be things that I might have the skill to actually do. You know, is the Klingon Empire logo like trademarked or copyrighted? If I put that on there, would someone come and confiscate the model, or send me a threatening lawyer letter saying that unless you paint over that, like a cease and desist sort of thing? Or don't I have to worry about that because no one's watching this stream anyway, and so they won't notice that I put a trademark something or other on a shield? I don't know. All sorts of possibilities there. Okay, so after very carefully painting all the detail in this model, you know, getting the boundary lines right and everything, and making it look, look okay, I'm going to start putting wash on it, and hopefully I don't know. We'll see. It might just end up being that by doing this, I'm messing it up so much that I have to toss it. So I'm trying to get just a little bit of wash on the brush here. Doing a light wash, a very, very light brown wash. No, color is not light brown. Okay. I'm applying brown wash lightly to I had it and then made it hit and undid it. I wanted it to get in between the fingers, and it did that for a second, and then it was too much, and then I undid it. There we go. That's what I'm trying to do. Let's get it in between the fingers there. Okay, now since I've got it here, I'm just going to go down the arm. To here, again, there's like, you can see some of the musculature. Get it there. Just trying to get it to show the contours of stick it in the ear. Stick it in their ear. That's a thing. Cat hair. So I managed to squeeze out like 10 times more than I need. That's kind of a recurring theme with this, with the paints and the brushes and things, is to get way more out than I need. Oh, dare I do the face? Let's do the other ear. So, not being on Star Trek's radar, I guess I'll take that as a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing in that I don't have to worry about Star Trek's attorneys catching the fact that I used something that looked similar to, but not identical to, their Klingon logo emblem. On the other hand, what that means is that nobody who cares would actually be watching the stream, which is kind of sad. I mean, it would be nice if like a Star Trek creator, isn't that the word now? Everybody's like a content creator instead of, an artist or something. Used to be a thing. People used to be artists or writers or whatever, but now they're all creators. I am definitely not that. Well, I guess I am, in the sense that I am creating a stream, but I'm not like creating anything original. Aim to be creator. There's now apparently a whole job category now of creators and influencers. Like your whole job, your whole livelihood is just getting other people to think the way you do. Really? That used to be called like propaganda. Marketing. Influencer. Okay, well, there's a wash on the skin color on this one, and well, it looks okay. It doesn't look awful. So we'll just say that that's okay. Do their hands and face too. They are a pair, doing these, and they all get printed in pairs, and so they get painted the same colors because they're just a pair. Face here. The goal here, there were two levels of goal, objectives. So let me rant about that. I don't know if people are still doing it now, but when I was working, we always, people would come in because the board of directors, my board of directors, every once in a while wanted to have a plan, like a 5-year plan or something, right? It's pretty communist having a 5-year plan, so it was probably more like a 3-year plan because we didn't want to be commies, so we couldn't have 5-year plans. Long-range plan, that's what it was. It was more really defined. It was more ambiguous. A long-term plan or a long-range plan to bring in consultants, and they usually weren't very good, and they all had formulaic kinds of presentations, but you always had to have goals and objectives. And no one could really clearly explain the difference between a goal and an objective. But you had to come up with goals first, or even worse, you had to come up with a mission statement. you know, come up with a mission statement, and you already had one, but they wanted to revisit it because they needed to earn their money or keep or something for the contract. So he came up with mission statements, and then that was usually vague and general, and it said things like, you know, do good things, not go bankrupt, that kind of stuff. And then you had to have goals and objectives. You couldn't just have like one or the other. You couldn't just have stuff I want to do, things we're going to accomplish. No, you had to differentiate between the goals and objectives. So, yeah, we ended up usually spending more time arguing about whether somebody's idea about what it is we wanted to accomplish was a goal or an objective. I have to say I got really tired of that and decided just unilaterally, at least for our place, that we weren't going to have a mission statement anymore. And ended up calling it a product statement. You know, what is it that we are actually going to make happen? Because, you know, what's the point of anything other than to make something happen? So that was it. And we didn't even bother with differentiating goals and objectives. So it's like, what are we trying to accomplish in the organization? And then what are we going to do to make it happen? It was a surprising exercise, you know, so instead of just talking about lofty things like being nice and responsible and not going bankrupt and that sort of thing, like you get in a mission statement, it forced people in the organization to actually sit down and think about what it is we're trying to get done. What is it we're going to do? I suppose if we were really honest, what we should have said was, what we're going to do is what people pay us to do. What we're going to make is stuff people want to buy, you know? For a lot of places, that's probably about as, you know, as deep and meaningful as it gets. Let's be honest about it. Anyway, yeah, well, what these are going to end up looking like is they're just going to end up looking kind of dirty and scuzzy and that kind of thing, but that's oftentimes how barbarians, I guess, are. That's why they're called barbarians, right? Yeah, so there I did like shading and stuff with a brown wash on the exposed flesh. Now I'm going to get out this dark gray, and instead of squeezing out 2 drops when I needed even less than 1, I'm just going to squeeze out 1 little drop, because a little goes a very long way. Yeah, well, let's just start right up here at the hair. See, there was hardly any on the brush. I even got rid of most of it. And this just spread all over everywhere. Anyway, yeah. Beardy. Here we get the extra and the very beardiness there. Anyway, it's Certainly making it darker. Yeah, it's kind of streaky, you know. That's kind of okay. I don't know if I like the way this is turning out, but it looks more like a barbarian should look than it did before. I'm just going to spread this around, and then, you know, I might come back a little later and try to shade some things a little bit. I don't know. But it, you know, it is getting the effectiveness of not making it look so pretty. Yeah, I mean, it looks okay. It's definitely, it's showing some of the contour. That's working out all right. There's little spots where it's sort of showing through a little brighter. Sword blade here. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try to make the non-cutting edge of this sword a little darker. I wanted to leave the tip a little lighter. That didn't happen right away. Just eraser. Okay, let's mess up the pants now too. So, yeah. Okay if it gets down onto the boot, because the boot's it's not going to show anything anyway. By doing this like kind of against the grain, I'm hoping it kind of, and it did there, it kind of builds up in the area underneath there. There's this stuff dries like immediately, and sometimes it doesn't at all. there that didn't get washed at all. Well, I think it's actually okay. You know, the base colors are still showing through, but it's not so clean and shiny like it was before. Yeah, it's okay. This one is going to turn out the same way. It's just going to end up looking kind of grayish and dirtyish and whatever-ish. Just painting it, as I've called it, against the grain. And by doing that, most of the wash goes like into the folds. This is, and it highlights them compared to the other areas. I suppose technically what I should be doing is, applying this with the same level of detail and care as I did with the base coat, but it's not what I'm doing. I'm just making it look darker and dirtier, and I'm definitely accomplishing that. This is why I'm so much better at things like the sewer tiles, where the idea was to get the wash on unevenly. It looks splotchy. I was very good at that. I think I did the sewer tiles, the splotchiness of them, very well. Okay, well, I'm just checking to make sure that there aren't too many spots that have no wash on them at all, because those would be bright spots, like down here. Let's do the same thing with the blade here. some shellac top. Yeah, anyway, these are now the less bright, shiny, barbarian-y things. There they are. They're all barbarian. And they look okay, you know. Personally, I kind of like the models when they're not washed. I did my orcs and goblins that way when I did Warhammer. I talked about that before, and kids laughed and said, orcs and goblins are not clean. And I said, why not? Why do you have to stereotype orcs and goblins and make them, you know, have to be all gross and dirty and stuff? Why can't they just be nice and clean, like elves, right? Wasn't really answer to that. They just sort of laughed. Okay. Well, I think they definitely look more like they should, and they'll probably, if we use them on our campaign, they'll look pretty decent on camera at a distance like this. So there's that. Now the last step is to paint the base, and I'm going to use the same color I use on all the bases. It's not this one. This one. And I'll be using a little brush to brush around the feet. And once that's done, it doesn't have to be terrific, but, you know, just satisfactory, then I will use a larger brush. There's just a spot there where the epoxy is still on the boot. Put wash on that, and that should tone it down. Anyway, it is what it is. With this, I will be forced to begin working on the knights. With the alternatives, the alternative would be to pull the submarine back out again. But right now, the deal I've made with the producers of the show, you know, the executive producer types, is that I would only do Submarine Wednesdays. And that's already happened. Submarine Wednesday happened on Wednesday, and today is Friday, and so, you know, honoring the agreement, it would not be right to do Submarine Wednesday both on Wednesday and on Friday. I think I would call it Submarine Wednesday Friday edition. I think other shows do that, don't they? As the ritual is with all new figures, is I pull them out and I rotate them around in front of the camera, and I usually go on and on and on and on about, oh, what colors should I make them? maybe I could do this color, and maybe this color would look okay or not. You know, it doesn't really matter, because it's just relaxing painting, and it's a matter of just getting paint on all the surfaces. Kind of like coloring by number kind of thing, because there's bits and pieces and things on the models. Anyway, yeah, you might as well get ready for that, because after I get this on, and then I put the brown wash on top of it to make it look browner. Really, it's just, I've done this before. I put this paint on and then I go, oh, is this the same color I used on the last one? I really should write this down because I want the same color on all the bases. Sorry, I'm going to pull another one up here. You're putting the same color on all the bases, and I should pay attention to what it is, and it's not. I mean, this isn't it. I thought for sure that this is the color I've been using, but it's not. Okay. This is what I'm going to do. I'll be off camera for just a minute. This may be the third time, fourth time I'm doing this, where I'm going, what color I've been using as the bases? Okay, so that's the color that I've been using on all the bases. Yes, you're right. Guess who? That's right. And maybe it's time for an ad. Is that you can subscribe to Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons on any day of the week. You don't even have to wait for Monday, Wednesdays, or Fridays. Okay? And you definitely don't have to wait for Submarine Wednesday, because that already because that has sub in its name. So that's a really good time to subscribe. But if you like, or even if you don't like, maybe especially if you don't like, if you're watching this and you're wanting to become a subscriber, you could do that at any time. So thank you for reminding all of us. Okay, so I'm going to get this color out, and I'm going to start over. So weird, I mix this thing up on the vortex mixer, and this particular color gets all streaky, and then I just give it a little shake like that, and it's fine. I'm pretty sure this is the correct color now, because the other one wasn't. Just really quite annoying, not remembering things from one time to the next. This is, what color is the base? I think I don't know. It might be just kind of like a running gag thing. I think it's almost getting to that point where it's happened often enough now that it's like, oh yeah, you really do remember what color it is, but you have to go through the whole routine once again, because it's almost like the theme song to an old comedy show or something. If you start painting the base and you don't pick the wrong color, and then go on and on and on about what is the right color and how can I select it and that sort of thing. Even this doesn't look right. I'm not going to do another one. This is the base color for the barbarians. Whether it's the same color I've used in the past or not. Color variation in the bases potentially. Yep. So that's going to be our running gag, is whenever I finish one of these models, it gets one of these figures and get close to being done, and it's time to paint the base, it's like, how are we going to handle the, I can't remember what color these things were painted. Ongoing gag. I thought the other color, I thought there was a situation that the other color is called Flat Earth. And we talked about that before and how it isn't necessarily at all an endorsement of a particular point of view or belief system. It's just what they call the paint, right? And I thought, that's probably the color of the base because they're flat and it's supposed to be colored earth, or dirt. So it made sense that the color for the base would be flat earth, and that's what I remembered, but it just isn't. It's not the same as that other one. This is called red brown. So you have to have a different name for every color. This, get it on the boot. I don't want it. I guess it's sort of reddish, and there's flat brown, and that's just brown, but it's not glossy. I don't know. Some of the names are always kind of interesting. Some of them make sense in terms of the color, but others just are names. Like if Crayola 64, right? There's 64 colors of crayon in this box, and each one of them has to have a name. There's probably, folks, I don't think you make a living at it, but it's probably part of your job. Or maybe it's not even part of your job, but it's a task that you were stuck with. It's like you're working at the Crayola factory. And they decide to go from like the 48 colors to the 64 colors. And so somebody comes up with the colors. I mean, that would be an issue in itself, is to come up with more colors that you haven't already had, and then get the dye and get it to work in the wax and all of that. But at some point, the colors are done, and somebody gets called over. Maybe it's one person, maybe it's like a committee. Who knows? I'll say it was a committee. Somebody called a committee together that would have to meet multiple times, because you can't just do it once. And they've got 16 crayons laid out in front of them of colors that hadn't been produced before. And their job is make up a name for each one of these crayons. This committee starts throwing out names like dark brown or light brown or lighter brown than the light brown we had in our box of 48, or ochre. I always liked raw umber and burnt umber, which are actually colors, pigment colors for like real painting, oil painting. They get umber and they burn it, and then they get burnt umber. I imagine you have to be pretty careful about that process, though, because depending on how much you burn it, you could end up with a very different color tone. Guessing that there was like a whole profession of burning umber to make sure that it was burnt just right each time, so that if some artist said, "Apprentice, go fetch me some burnt umber," the burnt umber they fetched was the same color as the burnt umber that they just finished using up. Right? I mean, there had to be that. Anyway, yeah, so the Crayola 64 had burnt umber and raw umber. And when you're like 8 years old or 7 years old, you ask your parents, what's this burnt umber and raw umber? And your parents have no clue, right? Just say, "Oh, I don't know, it's brown color." Of course it was. One is burnt and the other one isn't. That's why it's called burnt and raw. You're not wanting to question the wisdom of your parents, because they certainly knew more than you did. That was it. That's as far as your understanding of burnt and raw umber went. And you were like 6 and 7 years old and lucky enough to have gotten a Crayola 64 box at that age. I have to admit that I've never looked up to what this umber is that is either raw or burnt. And if you burn it, are you really burning it? What's the process for that? Do you like put it in a kiln? You just toss it around the edge of a fire? Like a stick of wood that you just light on fire itself? I don't know. I'm sure that there are people out there, because this is relaxing painting, people out there who do painting, not just dabble in it like this, who know all about the story of burnt and raw umber. Hi, old Brogger. Thanks for joining in. And how did that go? You said tried to make it. Did you succeed? Did you ever burn an umber? I don't know how I got started. Oh yeah, because I was talking about brown colors, right? Okay, so this is starting to dry, and the question is this... Yeah, that's pretty close to being the same color. Close enough. So I've made a note. Yep, like a lot of things, the first time doesn't work. We're very lucky that the second one did. That was great. So was it worth the effort to make your own? Sometimes just trying something and succeeding at it is really all you need. Okay, so They've completed the barbarians. They are now, they've been washed into oblivion so that they look all dark and streaky and, you know, not nice and clean and everything like some of the other ones. This one has successfully survived a broken arm and 2 broken legs. There. Here. Yeah, managed to survive a broken arm and 2 broken legs, and is still out there. Look at that, still out there on the battlefield. If not leading the charge, at least being a good deal of it. Certainly being threatening with their short story. We'll have to take a look at that. Thanks for letting everybody know. Yeah, sometimes there is. Sometimes there's a good reason to just buy things rather than do them yourselves, unless, you know, you're in the business of doing large quantities yourself. Like if you need a lot of it, a lot of something, and it's just less expensive, and you're good at it. But otherwise, it's like in cooking. Nobody ever makes their own puff pastry, no matter how good a bakery chef you are, right? It's just, you just don't do it on your own because you can't pull it off. It comes out of factories. Well, is it going well? I don't know. What do you think? Do you think the wash looks okay on this? You know, it's a little bit uneven and splotchy, but they are barbarians. And they really didn't look very good when they were just base coated. I think this one came out a little bit better in terms of the wash. I have coffee here with lots of cream in it in my official Dice and Dungeons mug. That's our logo. In case you hadn't seen it, there it is. Just like it is up in the upper left-hand corner where my hand is. Yep. It is pretty cool. I think I don't know if we're ever going to sell those or not. I would think that our fan base would be, you know, everybody would want to have a Dice and Dungeons mug. But I haven't heard from our executive producers whether or not these would be things that we would actually sell to people if they wanted to. Anyway, yeah, it's mirrored. So when I raise my right hand, when I look at myself, it's my left hand. It's really weird and disorienting. Okay, so these barbarians now are just kind of, you know, they've been washed. And they're all dark and dirty and smudgy, and I'm done with these. I haven't been lying. I don't know. Do I talk about directions? No, what was really disorienting is when Nicole rotated the camera, which gave a better view because it showed what was going on down here without it being in her face. Oh my. Huh. Yeah, you just see what happened there? As I was attempting to pull it off the base, I should have pulled the base off the base. And oh, this poor figure is now refractured. Do I look sad? Oh my, oh my, oh my. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should try to glue this together again. I mean, it can be glued together. That's not an issue. That can happen. But whether I should take the time to do that now, or whether I should do it like later, or whether I should just take this whole thing and just give up on it. I don't know. It took like 2 streams. I know. Do I have some here? This is a tube of super glue that has been opened in the past. So I don't know. Let me see if it still works. We got this nice little prong thing that came with the testers. So, the glue seems to be very well. Open this up. No, I don't have activator. But what I learned when super glue first came out, is there even anything left in this tube? No, that's not good. I hardly ever use this stuff. I don't have activator, but ages ago, when this stuff first came out, yeah, there's baking soda, I have that. When this stuff first came out, what they said was just breathe on it, because the water vapor in your breath actually did set it, and it worked. So you put drop, touch, and that was it. It worked. Yeah. Crash. Okay. I'm not going to take the time to do this now. This is what I should have done, and I didn't. No, that's good. There's a lump down there. That's from where I got I used epoxy on these last time. I'm going to put this poor creature aside and stick it back on there later. Wow, okay, I didn't know that. So just a little bit of sodium bicarbonate is an activator. I'll have to remember that, because I do have some unopened super glue, and I might use it later, maybe even on the submarine. So on this past episode of Submarine Wednesday, I actually assembled some things. The previous week, I had gotten the torpedoes onto the torpedo racks, but I actually got the torpedo racks set into one side. Okay, I have never done that with super glue. Yeah, I've used this modeling plastic, and you can even sand it. You're giving us all sorts of really good ideas, old Brogger. Thank you. In this particular case, yeah, they've just kept. I thought it was pretty well on there, but then, yeah, took it off the base and dead. like the baking soda is just becomes, it doesn't dissolve into it, but it sets it immediately. That's good to know. And if one's skilled enough to actually get the parts exactly right as it touches, that's pretty nice because it holds really well. You don't have to, like with epoxy or some other sorts of things, don't have to wait forever for it to set up. Okay, I'm just, as I'm going around on this, looking at maybe what colors I should do, because that's always a thing. So it looks like what's happening here with this is that there is, at least especially on this figure, there is metal armor over leather. This one doesn't have very much metal armor. There's leather elbows, and it looks like a jerkin kind of thing. Several layers of leather armor. This one's almost all metal. So this is going to be really pretty easy to do. It's just going to be different silver colors, and I'll put a wash on. Tricky thing is, what am I going to do with the shield at some point? You know, and the neck shows and the hands show, so I'll paint those early on. This one's going to be a little more of a challenge because there's different layers of leather armor and not much of the metal. So there's like metal here and here and on the shoulders and the helm. And of course there's these capes. Well, definitely needs to be stronger than most epoxies, because the epoxy failed and she has broken legs again. Maybe during break I'll just fix it again. Okay, so what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to paint the exposed skin parts first. You don't have any gloves on. I suppose I could paint this as though they had leather gloves. Doesn't look like it's done that way, but it would make more sense if it did. There's little bits of exposed leather in the elbows here. A little bit maybe like behind the knee. And so I'm going to paint that leather brown just because it should be that, where the joints of the armor are. It's like a little leather jerkin thing up underneath there. And then the cloak itself has a big collar. This one, I just don't know. It looks like there's just leather all over the place. And if I just paint it leather brown, I'm going to paint the cloaks green. I've done blues. Pull my color chart out, and I think I'm going to just paint them really dark greens. See what I've got. A little green, raining blue here. We've got dark green, flat green, thick green, refractive green. Refractive green is kind of a brownish green. I don't like that color. I could do that on the underside to make it look kind of shadowy. And that's to me a dark green. The thick green is a sad name, thick green, but that's always one of the best green colors. Okay, I'm going to paint the inside, this refractive green. It's kind of an olive color kind of color. I'm going to paint the outside of it, the dark green. And then I can use the gray wash on it. it'll darken it, not very much, but it'll highlight some stuff. And given how these things are put together, you know, the cloak is just, it, you know, painting the inside of it just has to be done first because everything else comes right on up to it. This one's really challenging. I thought, okay, night, just, you know, maybe you use two different colors, a lighter and a darker metallic for the armor, maybe a little bit of leather highlighting here or there. But this one just is leather armor, and no. I guess the leather armor will have to be different shades of leather. Maybe a different shade of green. Too much green theme going on? I'm not sure. Yeah. Color choices. Yesterday, it was mixing balls in all of the Viejo paint bottles. It used up all but one of them, and I put that one in the leftover scarlet red paint. Might be useful later. And I actually sort of sorted them out by color categories. So there's reds and metallics and greens and blues and different places on these. Let me show you them. I'm going to digress. Moving the camera. So these are the spools from PLA, and Alexis, our dungeon mistress, custom designed these inserts. Here you can see there's two because they have to come in from both sides and then they're cemented together. And these are custom made racks. The whole Viejo bottles. And they're just the right size, not surprisingly, because she spent a lot of time with calipers measuring things. And this holds 16 bottles. You can, really easy to get to. You just rotate it and find what you're looking for. You can put little labels on if you want on the sides. I thought about doing that, but then I found that it's pretty easy to find the color you want. Anyway, yeah. And then she made these and go into them. They nest on each other so that they stack and rotate. And there's one there for the large Tamiya colors. And that one's pretty much empty because most of them are down here on the table. So I just wanted to show that off. I thought that was pretty amazing. Pretty amazing invention and really helpful. Anyway, yeah, as you can see, there were a lot of colors there, and I put little mixing balls in each one of these little bottles, and now when it's stirred on the vortex thing here, you can hear it clicking around on the inside. I'm giving the grand tour, I'm showing off things, and I am avoiding painting. So I'm accomplishing all sorts of things all at once. I hope that was relaxing. So what I'm going to be doing now is using this kind of very dark color that probably won't look good, but who cares anymore? I keep saying that all the time. To paint the insides of the cloaks. And it's a really dark kind of brownish green And what I'm thinking is that this will be effective as being kind of a shadowy background for the armor, if you were looking at it. It'll certainly work with the metal armor this guy has. I'm not sure how it's going to work with whatever colors I end up using with all of the leather armor here. Okay, let's start with this one because it's the more difficult of them. Green. I haven't really used this color before because it's as a base color. I mean, as a front color or a main color, it's not that attractive, but I think that as a background color, the background of the cloaks here, that it will actually look pretty good. You know, it'll look very dark and shadowy. And it's the inside of the cloak. I mean, it's not where people put a lot of effort into looking decorative or pretty or anything like that. Always these little bits here, side shows. Because the designer spent an awful lot of time attending to detail like that. Usually when I do these as a pair, you know, I kind of do them in parallel because the color schemes are the same, but the armor on this one is so totally different other than the helm. Okay. Other than the helm, they have like nothing in common in terms of the armor. And as a result, other than the capes, which will be the same color because they're on the same team, capes, I don't think they have, there's just nothing the same between them. So I think I'm just going to paint them as individually. There's a little bit of, there's the helm, and there's a little bit of metal armor here and on the shoulders where it's pretty clear that that was it. Everything else looks like it's leather armor, and there's a good deal of detail layering going on. And I'm just going to have to pick different color schemes for that. I might go for kind of a yellowish brownish. I don't think I've done that before. I have a lot of yellowish, brownish, yellowish, brownish, bright, dim, yellow, orangish kinds of colors. And I don't want to make it all bright, like all bright, fiery orange or anything, but there's yellows that have browns in them. You know, they're kind of similar to each other. I think there's enough differentiation that I could layer the colors just like their armor is layered. There's little bits of plastic that they're not attached. They're just down in there, down in the crevices there. Definitely get in the way of the painting. Yeah, I mean, so that particular figure is just going to become a project on their own. And I'm going to today work on this one because it's just going to be a lot easier to do. For one thing, painting the metal armor, just little bits of leather showing at the joints. During the break today, I am going to once again repair the figure who keeps getting broken legs and arms. You need to watch me do that, but I do want to get that done. So the break might be a little bit longer than usual, as I get together the adhesive that I need and get it put together and then safely set aside to a place where it will remain intact until the next time someone picks it up and drops it, which is almost certainly going to happen. This is one gigantic, massive cloak on the back of this guy. And it's one of those that's dragging on the ground. You can just imagine. So there they are. They're fighting fiercely for their lives and lives of those around them, because they're brave, kind of knight-like figure. And then someone comes at them, and what they want to do is they want to quickly back up, to throw the other one off, throw off their advance. So this guy decides to quickly back up, and you know what's going to happen. The repeat turned off again. Okay. We'll take care of that at break because we're a half hour away. So yeah, they're going to be backing up and look at, see how long the cloak is. That's going to fold under as they're moving backward, and they're going to their feet will get tangled up in it and they'll trip. So like all these superheroes, I mean, it's very dramatic looking, having these big capes, but I just can't believe that it's a good idea, in real combat. I'm very certain that that's a bad idea. That's just my opinion about capedness. Okay. I decided that these characters, since they're so well armored, are actually going to be wearing gloves. So their hands are going to be painted the leather color. But there's a little bit of flesh showing on the neck here that I'm going to paint, and the same thing's true about this one, just a little bit there. Not the hands, because those are gloved, but just a little bit under the neck. And since it was detailed in the model, I'll just do that. There isn't very much of it. I'm just going to use this. I've used this before, so I'll just use it again. Use the tiny brush. And it's not that I'm going to be exceptionally careful about where the paint goes, because a lot of it all gets painted over. But it's deep set underneath here. We'll reach into the crevices. This guy's wearing like a cravat. Looks like a leather piece over there. So that'll get painted a different color too. You can see there's just a little bit of the neck showing. I suppose that's, so that when they're in combat, there's a good target for the person who wants to lop off their head. That's the reason for the gap. Tiny bit on this one as well. This one's inset yet even deeper, way down inside the model. Well, these guys are kind of unique in one way, in that their swords haven't been broken off, at least not yet. And so I haven't had to fashion any toothpick replacements. This guy here, yeah, that's a toothpick replacement. Okay. What should I do next? What I'm going to do next is this one. The only other thing I'm going to paint on here at the same time I'm doing this model. I'm not even going to paint the helm. I'm going to try to remember what colors I used. Is when I paint the back of the cloak, I'm going to paint the back of the cloak on this one as well. Oh, even that, okay. Even that is a bit challenging. This one just has a collar that looks like it might be separate from the cloak, but it can't be. That's how it's attached. This one has all sorts of detailing. There's attachments, strapping, a little collar around there. I don't know. This one is going to take a good deal more attention than this one. So this is the one I'm going to be working on today. And I'm going to be using the, what color did I say? I think I said flat green. Dark green. That's the outside of the cape. Okay. This one has little bits of leather showing underneath the metal on the elbows and the knees, and of course the gloves. And so I'm going to be painting those next. And what I want for that is leather brown. Put that in with the other yellows and brown colors. confused. I spent a good deal of time sorting these out into their different color categories. There. I'm confused. Where did it go? Where did I put it? It's up there for a reason. Two colors with brown in their name. And they're together up with the metallics because of a reason. Yeah, so I'm going to get these in. These are going into the showing the leather armor or the leather, not armor, but the leather undergarment underneath the metal armor. So there's little gaps that show on the elbows and the knees, and will also be on the gloves that I have decided exist rather than just being barehanded. It hasn't been used in a while, so I'm doing a good shaking. Okay, and I need just a tiny drop of this because there isn't much to cover. This is one of those weird colors that it's called leather brown. When you put it on raw, it doesn't look leathery at all. But with an umber wash, it really does look like leather. Well, okay. I managed to miss my target. Okay, good thing I turned that over. Those armor plates here on the upper arm, shoulder, don't go all the way around. Of course not. You want to have mobility. And so the underside actually needs to be painted the leather color. Right under here. Yeah. That's why it's always good to just keep flipping these things around. You see things like that. Same thing is going to be true here. One's on the board. Fortunately, it'll say for me. Yeah, I caught that in time. This is why I do these underbits ahead of time, because my brush, for some reason, just wanders around and decides that it'd be great to bump into the sword. Why not? I haven't done that today yet, so I will do that. Then I'm going to paint the bits behind the knees. It's here again, where there's a gap in the armor and the leather shows through because mobility. Right? So it makes sense that that would be there. And I'm doing this now, and what I'm going to do is this is going to dry during break. Is I'm actually going to put the umber wash on it before I paint the metal armor over it. And I'm hoping that that works and I don't get the metallic color onto the underlayment of the leather later. But I won't be able, the wash is going to like get onto where it's just going to go, onto other surfaces. And if I try to do it later, then it'll make it look like the armor is rusty. But if I do it right away, then I can get the color right and then just paint up to it later with great care. This color, like I said, it's called leather brown, but it doesn't look like leather until it's washed. Looks, there's an ambiguity there. It almost looked like that comes across here, and then there's straps. But then on the other side, that demarcation line isn't clear at all. I don't know. With this particular model, I'm just going to paint that all the metallic color. These bits of, it's holding the strap of the shield there. So the strap will have to be painted. The strap should be leather as well, right? Should paint it a different color, like a darker brown or something, just so you can see that it's there. Now, the other model has a lot of leather armor showing, and so it's quite likely, as I said, I've got these yellow browns. There's a number of different yellow brownish kinds of colors that I can use to show the different layering of the different leather parts of their armor. This will be one of them. All right, so what's happening here is, this bit up here should be done the same way. This is almost certainly part of the same leather undershirt kind of thing. totally different color. It's very, yeah. So this will be, oh, looks like a different color because that's a totally different piece. It only goes here. Fortunately, I haven't painted that yet, so that's part of the collar of the cloak there that I've managed to paint the leather color because, yeah. Just looking around here, make sure I've got gaps painted in. Got the gloves done. The underbit. Okay. So as that's drying, I'm going to put the umber wash on that before I paint the metal parts. Yeah. And then the shield, the back of the shield should be probably it's a metal shield. I'm going to paint it a dark metallic, maybe like steel or gunmetal, something darker than the armor so that it looks shadowed. And I'm actually going to use that to paint the edging. There's a little edging around it. I'm not going to do like brass or something. This guy doesn't look like he's got a lot of brass embellishments. But there are like raised edges on the shoulders and things, and a line across the top of the helm. Some of those I might try to highlight. In one model, when there was like this scale pattern on the legs, I alternated dark and light. And that looked okay. I might do that with this one as well. Just a slightly darker shade on every other one. Just to show some, give it a little more interest. It's a little tempting to like something here, like around the hips, is to paint that kind of ridge thing, maybe bronze. And I might do that just there, just something different. It looks like this is supposed to be painted leather. There's like a belt holding it. I've done that before, and when I painted that the leather color, it just ends up looking, I'd say, almost inappropriate. It does not look right. So looking at this, and it's just the top of the collar here. Okay. Hey, thanks for joining in. Yeah, it's coming along. Let me show you some of those completed figure. This is what I finished earlier today. This is a barbarian. I got all the base coating done on Monday, and then I washed it to make it look all kind of barbarianing and dark. This is actually another barbarian. This is their partner. Unfortunately, for the second time, it is broken off the base. And during break, which will be happening in about 10 minutes, I'll be, for the second time, doing the emergency surgery. like that. And then they'll be standing up on their base again, hopefully. But yeah, so we're painting minifigs. Here's one I did last week, just so you can see what we're doing. And before break, I'm just going to do a plug for Dyson Dungeons, just to explain what we're doing, because I'm waiting for paint to dry. And this is leather. This is a leather under and gloves. Oh my. This is why it's always good to rotate things. So I was painting the glove and just like missed the entire top of the glove where it meets the hilt of the sword here. So as I'm chatting, I'll be saying that it's really important to rotate your model in every single direction and then to do it again in the same directions, but from the other direction. So I'm waiting for this brown to dry so that I can give it a umber wash to make it look much more leathery. And then I'll be painting the metal armor, probably 2 different colors of metal, a lighter one and a darker one. And I think I'm going to use bronze. I'm going to highlight the little skirt sort of thing here. And maybe do some highlights on some of these ridges. So Dyson Dungeons started out as a Dungeons and Dragons campaign about 1.5 years ago, and we're continuing our saga, and that is streamed on Twitch on Sundays at 2 with a live chat, and can also be caught later on YouTube or as a podcast. And that continues. And so we started 3D printing stuff so that we could use them in our campaigns. So we ended up with things like these dungeon tiles. Okay. These haven't been washed yet, so that they're a little bit rough. And they're really cool because they all come with magnets underneath in their base. And so they come apart. And they can be rearranged in many different ways. We've shown this before. The ball magnets rotate inside. You can use them on any surface, and they hold together, and they come apart. We found that that works much better than the clips because it's that easy. Okay. And have also been producing minifigures that we end up using sometimes online. On our stream, on our D&D campaign. And that's what these are. These are near the end of the ones that are completed. These last 2 are the last of a batch of 8. And I'll be getting close to finishing this one up today because the color scheme isn't all that complicated. This one is wearing multi-layered leather armor instead of plate armor. This is all nicely plated armor, so that's going to be straightforward. This one's multi-layered leather armor, so I don't have to pick different color schemes and things like that to make that one work. We also do minifigs, dungeon tiles. We've done animals ranging all the way from anteaters to badgers to zebras, practically. That was kind of fun. I did a poison dart frog. I like that one. Was cool. I like doing that. It was pretty tiny, but we had good colors for it. And on Wednesdays, we do Submarine Wednesday. And what that means is that I have a vintage 1960s Renwall cutaway submarine, which is a model kit that I built when I was in 7th grade. And I've gotten, it's not a reproduction, it's a real one. And I've started working on that. It's moving along very slowly, I have to say, but it's moving along, and I'm having fun kind of doing a nostalgia thing for me. It's a little bit selfish, but a nostalgia thing with that submarine. So we have Submarine Wednesdays, which will continue as long as people say that it's okay to continue it. If people say it's doofus and inappropriate, then might stop. So yeah, this is all part of the Make sure you rotate your model in every single direction, because it looked perfectly fine from one direction and then not at all from the other. Yeah, so there's that. Just a tiny little dot of not being painted. Relaxing painting goes on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 12 until 2. There's a break in between, which will be coming up pretty soon. And Mondays and Fridays, I will be painting minifigs or dungeon tiles. A couple of weeks ago, I painted a gross 144 floor tiles for sewer sets. Okay, well, the leather has dried enough to be washed, and so I'm going to put the wash on before break so that that dries. Sometimes the wash takes a little bit of time. And umber, there it is. Sometimes the wash takes a little bit of time to dry, and I want that to be dried before I start painting the plate armor. And so over break, I will be finding the colors that I'm going to use for the plate armor, and I'll pull those out so you don't have to watch me do it. And I'll be repairing once again, that barbarian's poor broken legs. I'm just going to use the bitty brush here because the wash has to get down into these crevices. And that color is called leather brown, but it doesn't look leathery until it gets the wash on it. And then it looks really very leathery. So we'll get the leather looking leathery. Dry over break. The other thing the wash does is it does things like it helps show the fingers. That you get, the folds that you get in the leather underneath the arm here. Well, you'll never see them on camera, but I will do it anyway. So this changes. I don't know if you can see the compare and contrast with the other side, but it really makes a big difference in the color and the ability to see the detail, like in the gloves or the folds. This is one of our discoveries. Of course, everybody has to reinvent the wheel. So we did as we started our painting stream. None of us had spent much time doing minifigs or models or anything before. So, we watched some other people's videos, but mainly we just made stuff up on our own. And I'm old and I don't like to learn new things, so I just do things the way I make them up. And anyway, leather brown. So we wanted to paint something to look like leather. So why not use leather brown, right? That's what it says on the bottom. And it did not look leathery. And it was, we're going to do some washing anyway to probably show the contours and stuff. the details, folds and bends and things. It was a miracly. Suddenly, this kind of yellowish, brownish kind of color turned into, look at it, it looks like leather. Pretty impressive. Okay, stick your brush in the right thing. And there's this little bit of leather jerkin showing underneath. I painted that the wrong color. Nicely done. Tempting. Maybe I'm going to do that little bit of dry brushing of it on the exposed neck there, so it doesn't look quite so bright. It's hardly noticeable, but it toned it down. Toned down the real bright, flat kind of color. Okay, I'm going to rotate this because that's the lesson we learned, is rotate it frequently so you can see all the spots that you missed. Like there, the back of the elbow. Very much missed. Actually, a spot that will show if one is looking at it from the back. So what I'm going to be doing with this one when I get back from break is I am going to start painting in the plate mail. Not the plate mail, the plate armor. I'm going to get not real fancy with it. I'm going to pick two different colors, one slightly lighter and one slightly darker. So that, like here, where it's kind of scaly on the legs, it'll be like dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, that kind of thing. Okay. And it'll be a fairly subtle difference in color. I don't want it to be like black, white, black, white. That would just look dumb, I think. But enough so that I'll do the same thing up here, because that's layered as well. And on the shoulders, you know, maybe some of those things. And then I'm going to paint this kind of skirt-like thing bronze. It's a nice, deep, dark color. I think it'll look good. Remember, it doesn't have little circles like that. Doesn't. Not sure what that was. Like a bubble. It was like a bubble in the primer. Yeah, so I'll be doing that. I'm going to paint the back of the shield very dark steel metallic. And then I'll do the edging. I'm not sure what I'll do with the edging. I might do that actually with a brass color or something just to show off. And on the front of the shield is blank. And it's a blank canvas that allows me to attempt to do a design of some sort. So during break, I'm going to do some repair work again. Or barbarian that keeps getting busted. Repair the broken legs once again. And I will also be selecting the colors for the armor so that I don't have to be digging around looking for them while you're watching. Two brown colors. where I put the wash now. Yeah, I promised I wouldn't do this. I lied, apparently. I'm looking for. I spent a lot of time sorting these out yesterday and arranging them so that I could quickly find things. And it's true, I was able to find them, but now I don't know where they go. Turns back. Anyway, I'm going to be picking the armor colors. I'm going to be repairing the legs and actually taking a little bit of a break. Thank you for joining so far. I should be back about 12:30, maybe 20 minutes from now. I'm going to try to keep it short. While I do these other little off-camera things, and I will return, and maybe we can even get our music working again. We'll find out. So, taking a break. See you soon. We're back from break. I'm back from break. Maybe you are too. Good news is that I got them standing again. They are now standing. The broken ankles are becoming more obvious. There's some shiny spots from the glue, but yeah, I'm going to get up and very carefully put this figure away from me. And get to it a bit. So back to plate armor guy here. I did a couple of things during break. One is I discovered there is a separation between the upper and the lower armor because there's like a belt there, so I painted that in leather. And then I splashed some black paint on the eye holes in the helm. It will be less owly looking when I start painting that, as I paint it down to the indentations where that was. And as I was doing that, I noted that I need to paint the back of the cape first before I start putting the armor on, because basically the cape, if you look at it here, goes way down deep behind the shoulder armor on both sides, and I need to get that paint in there first. So I'll be stirring up the deep green paint here. The dark green is the color I'm going to be using. Hi, old Brogger. Yeah, I ended up using epoxy because the super glue I have is no longer glued. It's way too old. But the barbarian figure is standing again, yay. And I just put it way off on the side. So I'm going to be painting the cloak here, the back of the cloak, because it just comes in contact with the metal armor. I did pick out the colors, be using these and this and the brass, so you don't have to watch me reaching over to the paint. Storage wheels, glasses so I can see close up, and I'm going to be putting this on the sticky tack stand holder because large surfaces on the outside, fingers, I'm 99% sure that I would stick my fingers in it. And I'm painting this first because that vortex thing stirs it up, but doesn't get it quite right. Anyway, because if you can see it, it just gets down in there behind the metal parts. And so I need to get this paint on there first, and then I'll paint the metal parts down to it. But like around the helm here and the shoulder. Tried to paint that later. Well, you can just see what's going to happen. This is a nice green color. It's very dark. Wash it later, probably with a dark gray wash. I'll try to keep it a thin wash. But I want to pick up the folds in the cloak later. It's just getting everywhere. What can I say? Skill level 1 today. Fortunately, I decided to do it in this order so that getting paint all over everything that isn't the surface that I want painted isn't a problem, because I'll be painting it over it later anyway. I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to use a big brush to paint the back of it. And I'm going to take a chance in terms of the edges of the cloak. That is, I'm going to use the larger brush and hope that I get a good demarcation line instead of, doing that with a little brush first. And why am I doing that? Well, because I'm feeling a little lazy today, maybe. Patient, whatever. For reasons unknown, I'm going to take a chance on maybe messing up my demarcation line on the back of the cloak here. But I'm going to be using the brush like horizontally along the surface, and hopefully it'll be okay. This isn't a real sensitive spot here because all of that will be painted in with the metallic color later. I just need to use a little brush to get it down into the crevices. Yeah, we'll see how far along we get on this today. And then if it isn't finished, something to do on Monday, along with the other leather armored warrior one. What I could do, since I've got this color, no, I can't, because I'm just not sure. This one has all these little straps and different things, and I don't know if those need to be different colors or where the metal is, and that looks like metal plates along the top here. So I'm just not going to mess with it until I do that figure all at one time. So now I'm going to just put lots of paint on the back here. So weird using this brush. This is the brush I use for dungeon tiles, for doing the floors. And in that context, it's context, it's really pretty large, very large. In that context, it doesn't. Okay, yeah, that's part of the metal. But it kind of minimizes the any brush marks that might show up. Not exactly a detail brush. At least it's not turned into a mistake brush. This paint seems to be drying very quickly. You know, when I'm doing dungeon tiles, that's really a big advantage, but here it just seems, I don't know. The bottle really hasn't been opened very much. Yeah, so sometimes with these larger surfaces, as it dries, you get like little bubbles or something that open up. Here there's some flaws, we'll call them flaws, like little bubbles in the print. We'll let that dry, and then if we need to do a little touch up later, we'll do that. We use the Army, yeah. Yeah, it's acrylic. I've been using this. It's Tamiya, and it's mainly made for military models. I mean, most of the colors are military model colors. I started using this, I don't know, like 20-something years ago, when I was doing some model painting, when I actually did some military models. And it's a really nice paint. We've been getting the big jars of it because we've been using this as the base coat for the stone and wood dungeon tiles. Part of it is just because you can get a really good deal on the big bottles. Okay, you get a lot of paint for I mean, you're not paying for little jars. They come in these little minis as well. Okay, but these big jars, you get a lot of paint for the price. It doesn't leave brush marks very much at all, and is great for the base coating. Lacquer, yeah, they do make that. Anyway, it's not an ad for them. It's just that this is what we've been using. The quantity is good for the price. The colors are nice and flat, and they work really well on the stone and the wood. They dry quickly, and they take a wash nicely. So there's that. Most of the colors that I've been using on the minis are the Viejos. And we started getting these, again, and not trying to advertise a brand or anything. It's just what we happen to use because we went to, before the pandemic, started painting a couple of minis, and just the price was right. They had a large variety of colors. They were acrylics. They were easily to apply. And the price was reasonable compared to some of the other brands of paints. And there's a lot of colors. and we've been pretty happy with them, and because we've been using them, we keep using them. Yeah, and they're, you know, they mix well, they're thinner, works. Haven't used them from airbrushing. It's just been just brushing. But again, that. And again, mainly been using them either if it's a color that we need that we can't get any other place, or because we've been using them in quantity, like I said, as the base coat for our dungeon tiles. And I'm using a fair number of them on the submarine. Their dark gray color is just the right color for the hull, and the hull is big. Oh yeah, those big bottles, yeah, we use those for the primers, for priming too. Yeah, like anything else, you know, just the quantity discount is really pretty amazing. You pay a lot for packaging. We just bought some, since we're digressing and talking about quantities, surface cleaner for our cooktop, right? So you can get a 24-ounce bottle of this degreaser, basically is what it is, in a spray bottle, or you can get 64 ounces in a large bottle that you can use for refilling. And the 64 ounces is maybe 20% more than the 24 ounces. We just bought some fencing. We're fencing in some berry plants in our yard, right? Not to give you too many things, not to get too personal about what's going on here, but yeah, so it's basically chicken wire. And one can get 25 feet of this stuff for, I think it was like $12 or something, or you could get 50 feet for $13. I don't know. It's just so weird. So sometimes it's really worth, if you're using something, if you're going to actually use it and not just let it sit and dry out or rot or rust or anything, sometimes you can get way better price by buying a larger quantity and just getting a spray bottle. Yeah. Wow. That is a really good deal. So do you must have to thin it down quite a lot before you use it? Okay. I have picked out 2 of these colors. I could use the metallics. The Viejo metallics are really good, but they kind of run. They're made for use in an airbrush, and I'm going to be trying to get little bits painted at a time. So I got chainmail silver and gunmetal. This is darker, this is lighter. They're not too terribly different from each other, but it'll add a little variety. So I'm going to start on the pants. I just love the way these things come around the back of the cloak here, so you can't get the brush in. And if you can see it's scaled, right? So I'm going to do dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. Because I'm just going to alternate, and we'll see how that looks. Hopefully it won't look too silly. If it does, then I'll just pick one color and paint it. Oh, wow. Yeah, if you thin it that much, it will last forever. That's really thinning. Thanks for joining in, and thanks for chatting again. Have a good stream yourself, and I will try to catch on YouTube your mixing before. Thank you. Now, what I haven't done is I haven't talked about 60s cartoons today. You know, I'm gonna try this without my head magnifier today. We'll see how that goes. And I'm tempted to use a larger brush, but some of these areas are really hard to reach. I'm going to start with this bitty brush here, and I'm alternating darker and lighter metallics. I'm going to paint down is going to work. And what I should be doing is, if I paint all the dark ones first, what I like to do is, when I'm doing a scale thing like this, is paint down onto it and then paint up to it. But then they're alternating, so I can't really do that. I'm just going to have to do the best I can and see if this approach works or not. Or it might not. I don't know. We will see. Detecting is that I probably should thin this paint a little bit. It's pretty thick. And I might just go ahead and do that and then remix it before I go much further. And it isn't that it isn't, I mean, it's spreading kind of, but leaving brush marks. I don't really need to have that. I'm going to take just a moment here. Got a couple of drops of thinner in here, and then I'm going to remix it. Sometimes I find that when the bottle is full, you know, when it's new, the paint is actually like more viscous than later on. I'm not quite sure why that is. Anyway, we're going to give this a big long stirring here and hope to get a little thinner. I don't want it to be as thin as the metallics, because then they get a little runny. Anyway, it'll either be a little better or not, but it's the effort to try, and then we'll continue to paint armor. Yeah, it's definitely better. A little bit made a big difference. Back as far as I can go without getting it all over the cloak. Yeah, that little bit of thinner made it, and the remix made a big difference in the flow of the paint. So I'm kind of glad I did that. It's not gumming up and leaving brush marks like it was a little bit ago. Just alternating bands of dark and light and dark and light. Not putting any of the light on yet, so I guess I'm just putting dark on. The other color I'm going to be using is the same color tone, but just a little bit lighter, less dark pigment in it. I don't know. I'm hoping that this banding, I've done it before, and it looks okay. I mean, I could paint it all one color and then just give it a wash, but I thought, well, why not? Why not make it look a little bit weird and fancy? Yeah, it's just a minifig, right? Anything else, unless the paint gets on too thick, it can just be redone. I think when I'll test the chainmail, the other color I'm going to use too, to see if maybe that should be thin, because this really made a huge difference. Just that little bit of thinning. I'm going to paint the shoulders and the top here light. I'm going to do the same sort of banding on this here, on the chest armor. Paint it, the top one light, because if I decide to highlight the edging on the armor, could do that in a dark color and it will show. Okay, and this last bit down here. Okay, I'm gonna be painting onto the surface of the thing that's going to be painted light. As I'm painting down to this little bit of separation here where the leather belt is. Step high enough so that I think I can use this and get this without losing that little detail. So I'm going to paint that light and that light and that light and those light. Use the lighter color for that. So this will be kind of accenty. Tempted to use the darker color on the helm though. Just to give it kind of like weighted, you know, up on the top. And that I have to paint around the eyes and the neck and everything else. So I'm going to use the little brush for that. This looks decent. So I'll do that. I hope I haven't messed it up by letting it sit in the water. Managed to bend the bristles nicely. So this will take a bit as I work my way around the neck of the helm. Get it down into where the cape is, but when the eyes are inset, so theoretically, if I hold the brush horizontally, I can paint up to but not over the little eye socket things in the helm. Can't really see where they are. And I should have only had magnifiers for this. Sometimes my eyes start out focusing okay, and then they stop. I say I've got both eyes. I like the helm in the darker color. I guess with the eyes, the really critical thing is that they are symmetric. Okay. And that is symmetric, so I will not mess with that any further. There's little bits of the helm here that are underneath where you can't see it, but I can if I do this. yeah, I think that other than this spot right there, where I managed to get it onto the green where it shouldn't be, to pull the green paint out and touch that up. And I will sooner than later. Okay, so dark, light dark, dark. I'm just making sure these are covered. In here, that and that. I think this part is I'm going to do bronze, I said. I'm going to do that in bronze. I might do that next before I do the light thing. And I'm going to paint these bronze up here. It looks like the same sort of did kind of material, and then these will be the lighter color. I was going to paint the back of the shield an even darker metallic called steel. In the water so that the bristles bend on the bottom. That's not a good idea. Okay, I'm going to check the texture of the chainmail. Might thin this as well. We'll see how thick it comes out. This has been around for a while. Here. Seems to be spreading okay. I might just leave that alone. Since I started, I might as well use up the drop that I put out there, right? Use the smaller brush on this part, these parts. Probably get the arm bands done here. And then I think I will thin it a little bit before I do the rest. Just, yeah, it's just gumming up on the brush just a little bit. I'm going to have to decide what color to paint the blade. At this point, I'm thinking I might just, if there's some of that gunmetal left, I might just use that. But there really isn't, so I won't. Yeah, I think this would definitely work better if it were a little bit thinner, especially with a little brush. I'm gonna get the tiny bristle brush out. I think what I'm going to do with this is pretty shiny. Is I'm not sure if I want to use the dark gray wash on it, because that can sometimes get really dark looking. So I might just use the light gray wash, which isn't going to change the color very much, but it will tone it down and pick up some of the texturing. Look at it, you know, it's looking okay. It's coming along. The chainmail silver we've often washed, and it looks pretty good with a gray wash on it or a dark wash. Anyway, we'll have to decide that a little bit later about a couple of things. One is to put a couple of drops of thinner in there, thin it down just a little bit, and then get the little brush out for the detail work. Do that instead of that. It must be getting late in the stream. I'm getting careless. Yeah, what was I going to do? I was going to paint the elbows. I need to do little elbow bits. And then the light, the banding on the legs and the chest. And I am going to magnify my head, because detail work. Magnify my head in just a bit after I stir this paint. We'll play around with the focus on the head magnifier until I can. Yeah. You can still see what I'm doing. I'm painting elbow armor. What I found with this is that it keeps, I can focus on the model pretty well. The paint well down there is very much out of focus. Doesn't really give me much of a headache, but it does make me a little bit nauseous, to be honest. Moving back and forth between sort of in focus and mostly not. Try not to belch or burp too much or barf on your stream here. Okay, I'm gonna there. If I rotate that, it's outside of the focal. It's outside of the lens, and so I'm just going to start at the bottom here. I'm doing that. You can see the difference in the color. Into the greens, so when I do the green touch up, which I need to remember up at the top, I need to come down and touch that up just a little bit. I did this bandit armor effect on one others that had actually a similar kind of molding, the kind of scale look, and it looked okay. Maybe this will be a partner, a member of the same team or something. I thought it'd end up looking a little better than just all the same color. Sky all comes down to it, but yeah, whatever. It's relaxing painting, so I'm going to be relaxed about it and say that however it turns out is the way it was intended to be. So there's the banding. You can see it there. It's fairly subtle. It's not real, and a lot depends on how the light hits it. Maybe when if I wash it or not, I'm not sure. Change the look of it. get producers what they think in terms of washing and what it should be. Like I said, I think what I might try is, instead of the dark gray, which would make everything look very dark, is I might try using just the light gray wash on it. Way of toning down the brightness of it so it doesn't look like it's just fresh out of the armory. Although, you know, sometimes these nightlight guys took great pride in the polish of their armor. It might be part of the backstory. But again, I'll get some expert advice from people who are more artistic than I am. It might be done to this next after this is done, after this is painted. So one thing I haven't done, and I wanted to do this on Submarine Wednesday as well, is I'm not going to get around to it, but I'll tell you what it is that I've talked about Tom Terrific, the greatest hero ever, because he's so clever. The 1960s cartoon. Well, I've been lucky enough to get, at one point I got this bright silver paint on the spot I didn't want it. The production cell of the cartoon. Terrific cartoon cell. And I was going to show it to you, but I haven't gotten around to doing that. And for no other reason, so that you could see that Tom Terrific really did exist and not just part of a fevered imagination. Going to have to wait for another time. Okay, so I'm up here. This is a little weird because it goes up onto and around the arms. Clear demarcation line there. As well. Guy is very nice and silvery shiny now. Nothing else, we have that to say for it. Silvery shiny. These little side skirt things, I'm going to do bronze, as I will be doing these things up there. Yeah, sort of rotating it here. So there was a couple of spots that I needed to redo with the dark green. Yeah, down here on the leg and up on the neck. I want to make sure that everything that should be shiny is shiny. This spot might be green as well. Kind of hard to tell right where the armor is, even with the glasses on. Where the line should be. Okay, well that's not bad. I'm going to get the dark green out again and do those touch-up spots. Otherwise, I'm likely to forget about them. I think this paint was stirred pretty well. There's a little paint in the cap because I'm just using tiny little dots of it. This one on the neck is the most obvious spot. And here it's just again one of those where should the boundary be kind of things, and especially with the metallic paints, little spots show bright. And there's one little spot there. And disappear spot. Well, that'll do. And there was one up on the collar here. The boundary line was just uneven. I can get the brush on there. Good, I didn't go too far. Okay. So the next color I'm going to paint, I believe I'm going to do the bronze highlights. Then after the bronze, I'm going to do the back of the shield in steel. And I really don't know what I'm going to do with the front of the shield. Okay, what else I should do is the hilt of the sword. I'm going to do that black. I'm going to do that now so that I can paint the blade of the sword yet today. I've got a half hour yet, so I'm really moving along here. Moving along better than I did on the submarine. This looks shiny, but it flattens out very nicely as it dries. I'm not going to do like gold highlights or anything on the sword. It's a pretty utilitarian sword. get the hilt painted, then I can paint the blade. The glove, but not on it, especially looking at it from the front. I just don't like the way that line is. It's like this little sub-millimeter bit. Got it on the glove. Well, I'm going to have to touch that up a little bit with the brown. I'm not sure how much it's going to show. Doesn't. I'm going to declare success. Even with the glasses on, it's not too bad. So I have this. I'm going to paint the belt buckle black, just because it's there. We might as well let everybody see it. What's that? I'm seeing is that there's a lot of black paint in this brush. Is that I painted that without the magnifiers on. It's that the metal part here above the belt didn't go down to it. This is the darker of the two colors. Can't really see it unless you use the magnifier. But since I have this out, I'm going to paint the blade this color. Paint there to do it. And let's not waste it. Let's use it. Yeah, I mean, why not? And we're going to wash that blade. I'm going to definitely wash the blade with the dark black, the dark gray wash. Just yeah, there's a spot of dark gray. I shouldn't wear these things, you know, because then I can see little flaws. There's a tiny spot of metallic I can even see without the glasses on the back of the cowl of the cape. Thought I had gotten, but I didn't. That's painted the metallic color. Like I can only see it from well, it's like 90% fixed. That's a pretty good percentage. This is where I see little spots of things that I want to touch up that I shouldn't. Got myself hurt something. Okay. The bronze. I'll do the bronze next, and then the back of the shield. And then I might end for the day because I really don't know what I want to do with the shield. And so there's no point starting on something that I don't know what to do. I don't know. I'm not sure even what to do with the front of it. But I do know where this is going, so I can do that. Hi. Sorry, I was so caught up in doing little touch-ups and talking to myself about what I was doing that I didn't check up on chat. So thanks for joining in. I will invite you to be a follower, or if you'd like to be a subscriber. We do relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 until 2. Sometimes a minute late. Sometimes, like today, I was 57 seconds late starting, and one of our viewers went out of their way to berate me for being delayed. Anyway, yeah, 10 until 2, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mondays and Fridays are Dungeons and Dragons related painting, which is to say either minifigs or dungeon tiles. I've been doing minifigs lately, but probably will be picking up on dungeon tiles again next week. And then on Wednesday is Submarine Wednesday, where I am working on a vintage 1964, I think. Anyway, it's mid-60s cutaway Renwall Polaris launching submarine. And I built an original when I was like in 7th grade. And this is an original. I'm building it now. And I have to say, even though my memory of, 7th grade work is not perfect, that I'm doing a better job now than I did then. Partially because I have more colors of paint to work with. We also do a Dungeons and Dragons campaign stream on Sundays. But thanks for joining in. Please consider becoming a follower or a subscriber and watching Relaxing Painting on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And it is just always so relaxing. It has to be because of the pace at which I work. Good idea or not, I am painting bronze highlights on parts of this armor. I'm glad you joined in. Thank you so much. Fortunately, it's raised up quite high above the rest of the model. Reach behind without touching the back of the cloak, and at least, if nothing else, give the impression of it being the bronze. Be finishing the bronze highlights here and kind of like this little skirt piece of armor. Yeah, I really like that color. I don't know if it goes well with this model or not, but I really like it. So I'm putting it there because it's a good color. And then I'm going to paint the back of the shield. And then we'll be wrapping up for today as we contemplate what to do with the shield. The shield is just this flat, blank surface. And I'm kind of tempted maybe somehow to pick a nice flat base color. I might even paint it white or something. I'm not sure. And then try to paint a design on it. Like a sigil or a coat of arms or an X. I don't know. Maybe what I should do is hire an artist like Nicole. Just let her figure out how to do something nice on the shield. It's unusual for this kind of a model. The designer put details like everywhere, right? Including even a belt buckle on the belt between the upper and lower pieces of armor. And then just left the front of the shield totally blank. No embellishment, nothing. Which is just really weird. Okay, more spots. I have to get the green paint out and touch it up. Okay, there isn't much of that bronze, and it's kind of a nice dark color. I think it looks okay. A little samurai-ish, I guess, which isn't really appropriate for here. And the banding of the light and dark, I think, came okay. The colors differences are subtle enough so it doesn't look like it's a zebra. Now let me just do the green while I'm fretting about it. Spot here, touched with the silver paint that I didn't notice before. And there's a bigger spot where I got the bronze on. All it took to fix it was fixed. Just have to clean the brush again. Yeah. So I'm going to use two different brushes on the back here, I guess. One is the shield touches up against, actually goes behind the wrist armor. So I have to get under there without getting it all over everything. And around the hand. And then I'll use a slightly larger brush to fill in the rest of it. I'm going to be using this metallic steel paint. This paint is really designed for like model airplanes and airbrushing, so it's really quite thin. But in this case, I want it to be, because it's kind of a difficult area to reach, and I'm using different kinds of brushes, and I don't want a whole lot of brush marks coming out of it. Bit goes a long ways. I'm just going to drop like one little drop in here. Should be more than enough to cover the whole back of the shield. And let's see what I can do about getting this the handle on the shield. Grasping the handle. Paint that. Back of the shield color. Get in behind here something. A good job of not being able to focus. The problem is that it's the depth of field issue is coming up here in a very literal way. Try that with a larger brush. I think there's more bristle, and I can push the bristle up to the area I'm trying to get. And you can't really see it, I think, from where you're watching. But it's behind the hand. And my eyes are focusing up here on the knee, and I'm trying to get way back there. Into No, then everything's just fuzzy. Okay, just the last bit here, and I'm kind of struggling with it because I can't see it. In some ways, I mean, I can see it that it needs to be painted, but I can't see it in a way that allows me to get to it. Close. There, that's as much as I can do. Yeah, it doesn't show from there. At least I can't see it there anymore. So I'm gonna finish painting up the top of this. That was just a kind of a struggle getting that done. Okay, the back of the shield is now painted this steel color, which is a nice dark metallic. And it's just going to stay that way. There's no reason to do anything more with it. I want to paint the edge. And I'm not sure what I'll be doing with this later, but at least it'll be kind of finished looking around the edge. And then I'll show you what I need to do yet. Okay. That seems satisfactory. I'm going to paint the whole front of this color as well. See, there's got this nice flat surface of the shield. There's nothing on it. But this paint levels well. And it will give it a base color with nothing else. But there's a rim around the outside that I might end up painting that bronze, the same color that I did there and there, just as a highlight. But the most important thing is the front of the shield needs something, right? I mean, it's just blank. So I can highlight that with the bronze, and that won't be too hard. I can just very carefully edge it, okay? But I need to decide what to do at the front of the shield, and that I don't know. That'll have to wait until Monday. Otherwise, this is pretty much done. I'll show it to you quickly in the last few minutes of this stream. I'm going to take these off, turn off the light. Billy down here always does. The first half of the stream it feels fine, and then as the longer I sit down here in the studio, the chillier it gets. So I'm sniffling. Okay, so this guy has plate armor and a green cloak, and it looks a little glossy, but I'm going to wash that down with a dark wash. I might even try to put some wash on the inside of the cape. I'm not sure. I used two different colors of silvery, and you can see the banding in certain light. It's kind of subtle. I'm going to have to decide what to do in terms of washing it. I don't want to just leave it like that. It looks too... well, maybe I will. I'll get some advice to see what people have to say about how it looks. And the shield is, I'm going to leave the back of it dark like that, but the front I have to decide whether I want to try to paint something onto there or not. So what needs to be done with this guy now is a little bit of washing. I'm going to wash on the blade, Need to decide what to do with the front of the shield. Need to decide whether to do any washing on the armor or not. Definitely want to put a black wash on the cape because it looks kind of doofus right now, to be honest. And I'll go from there. So I'll be able to finish this on Monday without any problem. It's just a question of how will it be finished? I don't know. That's the question that needs to be answered. And then I have this other figure, which is a partner. It's wearing the same sort of helm, but has hardly any metal. I mean, there's, other than the helm and maybe these bracers, maybe a little bit of shoulder armor. It looks like the rest of it is leather armor. And so what I'm likely to be doing with this one is picking 2 or 3 colors, because there's layers, many layers of leather armor here, is 2 or 3 colors of brownish, yellowish, leatherish, and painting those on and then doing a brown wash over it to make it look leathery, other than the parts of the helm. And this helm is different too. This helm was a full face helm. Okay, covered the mouth and chin. Looks like this one doesn't. Oh, can't see that. Let me look through here. I might have missed something. Yeah, their mouth is showing there. What's the other one? I can't really tell. Can't tell whether it leaves the mouth open or not. Right. In which case I'll need to redo it. Okay, well, that's something to come back. I might need to, right here, this little bit here, is it looks like the face is showing. And that's not that hard to do. I'll just need to get the skin color out again and do that. And I gave it a little bit of a brown wash, I think, just to tone it down. But yeah, it definitely looks like the mouth is showing partially under here. Yeah, didn't notice that until I put these glasses on and magnified my head. Thank you all for watching relaxing painting. Oh, that wasn't relaxing. Okay. Relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 until 2. Thank you for being a follower. If you can, thank you for being a subscriber. If you really like what you see, go to patreon.com/diceanddungeons and you can become a patron. That would be terrific. And you can have unique access to some of our Dungeons and Dragons warm-up sessions and other perks that come with that. Monday, I'll be hopefully finishing up this one and then trying to figure out what to do with this one. I am not sure, but it will be on Monday because I'm going to start putting paint on it and we'll see where it goes. See how that turns out. Yeah, that should be interesting. And on Wednesday, Submarine Wednesday, I'll be continuing to work on my vintage 1960s Renwall Cutaway Polaris launching atomic submarine. Thanks again for joining in. Thanks for being a follower. Thanks for being a subscriber. Thanks for being a patron if you possibly can. And we'll see you Sunday at 2, I believe, for the D&D stream. Oh, no, this is... Yeah, I'm not sure if we're showing it on Sunday or not. Check one of these social media things that we have. I'm old enough that I can just call it social media thing to see when it is, but there will be relaxing painting on Monday starting at 10ish. See you then. Thanks. Bye.